Andy, I'm gonna okay. Andy, I'm gonna let you start off with your understanding information about the wastewater treatment plant. I look forward to Michelle's comments as well. So, Andy, you want to give us an update on what you found out about the plant?
Sure. It was actually on the July 26th city governing body meeting on the consent calendar. They approved a request that had been submitted April 3rd, I believe, from Fred H. To John and Mike for $373,757 for HDR Engineering to complete the design of replacement ultraviolet disinfection facility at the plant. And the contract is for 2 years, so they have until June of 25 to complete this. And of course, the ultraviolet disinfection portion of the plant is what is giving us high E. coli readings downriver from the outflow.
Simply the problem is, what do we do between now and 2 years from now in terms of stuff going into the river?
Yeah,
I don't know that there's any easy solution to that. Something we can do. Oh, yeah. Full disclosure, I'm now working down the hall from Bill Schneider and Jesse Roach and all those folks. So we're going to actually, I'm meeting with them this afternoon. So that'll be pretty interesting. One of the things I'm going to be doing is looking at grant funding for the new wastewater treatment plant. And so that'll be kind of an interesting exercise. And one of the things I want to do is I don't want to get caught up in the, let's do it just the way it's always been done. I would love to see if there's any cutting edge, new kind of technology, whatever. But I'm reading this 180-page report, and I'm probably about a third of the way through it, and talk about technical and all the different things go on in a wastewater treatment plant. It's absolutely amazing. All the different things you've got to take care of, and you use this or that, and then you got to take care of that, and then it's pretty complex. But I think there may be other ways to do this. And one of the things we have discussed before. Hi, Aaron, how you doing? Nice to see you. Anyway, so I mean, there are new ways of doing wastewater treatment, and I'd love to start exploring other options rather than just the traditional way of doing things. And that's where I think the mindset of the city is you just do it the way, I mean, you do it the way it's supposed to be done kind of stuff. And I think there may be, and I'm looking for advice, suggestions, ideas on other types of systems that might work for us. It's a lot of water that goes through there, I'll tell you. Well, so Michelle, are we accurate in saying that we're just going to have to sit back and take the high levels of E. coli until this new system's in place?
Well, I suspect that that's true. I know that the city is exploring the potential to do some kind of treatment, but chlorination is one of those things that's really not tenable for putting into a river. I mean, it has to be perfect, and I just don't know that the EPA is going to be super embracing of that kind of a treatment. So I know that they're looking at other possibilities, but I don't think that there's been any kind of resolution on that at all. So it's definitely being thought about, but I just don't know, what, I haven't talked to John about that in a while, so, but, for a while, yeah, we're going to have to just deal.
So Commissioner Hensley, I'm not sure if you heard that, but one of the concerns now is the UV system for the wastewater treatment plant is no good, and they're going to put in a new one, but it could take up to 2 years. And in the meantime, we will continue to get high levels of E. coli coming down the river. And so we're just looking at ways maybe we can mitigate that or do something that would help out the city and help out the community. So we're open to discussions and ideas. William? Go ahead,
So
William.
I'm wondering about the UV light, because they've been out of compliance for over 100 days. I don't even know what the count of days is, but could that light have been failing or kind of not up to par all that time, and that been the cause of all of this?
Wonder, you would think there'd be some system of identifying when something like this is going out in your maintenance planning or whatever, that you have this in mind that this is going to fail at some point. You need to do something to anticipate those kind of events. So I'm sure that that's something that the city is thinking about and trying to figure out now. Aaron, do you have any experience with large systems, large wastewater treatment plant systems?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, we do primarily for polishing at the back end. Like we don't design treatment systems at scale, but a lot of polishing or side stream treatment. What I will say, I went to that breakfast meeting the other morning on Tuesday with John Dupuy, and just one refinement I think maybe that's worth exploring is that they did say, and Michelle, this might have been after you left, I can't remember, but they did say that the UV, the problem is that it's very old, and so even getting like replacement parts, nobody's making those parts anymore, so everything they have to do to fix it, they have to like even buy used for new parts, and so they can't maintain it well because it's sort of beyond its service life. So they are going to replace that, but they said two things. One is that the water quality data is being released, I think maybe to you guys, Carl, or to some folks downstream, but like maybe not so broadly disseminated within the public. So I think there's probably like some lack of understanding or knowledge of like what is actually happening. And so Mori had talked about, maybe the Watershed Association helping disseminate that. But I do think like looking at like what is the consistent, how bad is it and what kind of scale is it might help answer some of your questions. Because the way John described it, and I don't know if this is true, is that right now most of the hiccups have been still within secondary contact standards for water quality. Not within, drinking water standards. But I think that there's maybe like a little bit of, to me anyways, I don't have enough information of like what they actually are discharging to have a whole lot to say about that. But the challenge is that the wastewater is pretty much 100% of the river, right? There's no dilution here, unlike bigger plants. Like most municipal treatment plants would be discharging into a water body that has other water in it. And so the impacts are often, frankly, the solution to pollution is dilution, right? Like you get a little less impact, if something goes wrong. But in this case, it's very sensitive because it is all the water. So I think, looking at that data a little bit more closely, John, I don't know if he was playing it down or if it is like just like the truth of however it's working with their discharge, is that it is, maybe not as bad as it sounds in terms of like where they are with recreational water quality. But so I just passed that along from the meeting the other day. And in the short term, they did mention chlorine, and I think, Michelle, this was after you left. They are looking at a chlorination and dechlorination process. They're going to be chlorinating water for the soccer fields and the reuse. And then I think they're also looking at doing the same thing for the discharge, which is a short-term solution. But as Michelle's pointed out, has to be done really well. So you're not actually discharging, chlorinated water or byproducts into the river. But, those two things, UV and chlorine, are the most common disinfectants at this scale and at most scales. That is like common. There are technologies using like large sand beds and whatnot that have a very good profile for disinfection, but they're huge, and the scale and the timeline is not short.
Thank you. Yes, Anna? Commissioner Hensley.
So it concerns me. All of this concerns me, obviously, but are they putting water on the soccer fields at the moment? Okay, so they're not doing anything. They haven't really come up with a solution.
No,
real-
they are. They are. They have a solution. They are putting it into a tank. They're chlorinating it. They get the test, real-time test. They see that they're not over the NMED requirement, and then they're watering the golf courses and soccer fields.
Okay,
So
so they're chlorating, chlorinating it in a tank and then releasing it. So
Right.
they have the ability to test it to make sure they're not doing it wrong.
Right. And that threshold is 100 CFU per 100 mils. The river requirement is 410 CFU per 100 mils. And Aaron, they're regularly at 700, 1,000, 1,200.
Oh,
50.
wow. Okay. Yeah.
Can't they do,
Yeah.
can't they do that to the river water also?
It's really like you have to do it perfectly because you don't want any residual chlorine going in there. So it's just, it's definitely needs to be super precise. And, so they're exploring that from what I understand now from Aaron,
Okay.
that they are looking at that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Do we know if the EPA is doing anything about this? It seems like they should be involved, right?
So the EPA issued an administrative order to the city a couple of weeks ago. The administrative order was for a test that they did not do and turn in with their monitoring report so they did not cite them for the E. coli issue at all, but which is interesting. By the time they sent the administrative order, the city had already complied with it. So it just, to me, as a former regulator, it kind of seems like the EP, and this is just a guess, that the EPA would say, yeah, we enforced. That's what we did. Leave us alone. We enforced. Because they're probably getting some heat from folks in Santa Fe regarding this issue. And so they issued an administrative compliance order that really had, it was a nothing thing, but they did it. So they can say they did it.
Yeah. So, seems like we need to get more answers, huh?
Carl? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, Carl, I'm going to go back to that meeting with John DuPois. That was a water breakfast Tuesday morning. And one of the notions was those reports that you are getting, Carl, from the wastewater treatment plant. Do you get those daily of the counts?
No,
And-
not daily. It's not kind of sporadic. I mean,
Okay.
sometimes I'll get 2 or 3 days in a row.
So,
And then, so
so
no,
the notion would be to get those on a regular basis and to post them on a public website.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I
Trying to
can
do
jump
that.
in there, I did speak briefly with John and Councilor Romero Worth after that meeting and confirmed with them that it would be okay to at least temporarily host that data on the Watershed Association website. During the meeting, I said, this is an essential thing. We've been waiting for months to have more public access to these data. And to Aaron's point, it's hard to know what to do or what strategies without having those data more accessible. And Councilor Romero Worth described that, it's hard to get capacity at the city and it's hard to have the webpage and they're having issues hiring as so many folks are. So I said that, the Watershed Association would be happy to host this page on behalf of the city free of charge starting immediately. So I have taken the liberty of setting up that page already. And I did email John and Councilor Romero Worth first, and I haven't heard back yet, but I will email them again today and confirm. But I do think that this is a really important thing for the community to have access to, taking the data directly from Carl's reports. So data coming directly from the city collection But I do think it's really important for folks to have access.
So I will just add that I emailed Sandra Gabaldon just now to ask her if she had sent any recently, because I hadn't gotten any in a while and I was just checking in. So, well, she may respond quickly. And if she does, I'll let you all know what the deal is with that, because it was pretty regular. I was getting them very regularly, and then it just a week ago just stopped.
Lately, it hasn't been. Yeah, I agree. It was a real regular, and then all of a sudden it kind of fell off. But that is important. And Mori, thank you so much for taking the initiative on that. That is deeply appreciated. And I think William and I and other people can get the message out to some of our associations and just get the word out to everybody that we can, that there is information that they need to, if they're interested about what's happening on the river, this is an opportunity to actually see firsthand what's going on. Now, one of the things, this is coming from this 180-page report I'm reading about the wastewater treatment plant, is the issue of whether or not the data that they've collected over the years is accurate. I know that sounds awful, but it's one of those things where we start looking at the data and you go, well, I'm wondering, there's just question marks sometimes. And I don't have anything to prove that or validate that. It's just one of the things that I think has concerned us before, and something maybe I can bring up and talk to John about. So that's just another aside. But again, Mori, thank you so much. That is really, really a neat thing to do, and it's really a nice service that the Watershed Association is providing. And it's up to us to get the word out. Andy, do you have any more information about the plant that you want to talk about?
No, those were the main thing. And then in this discussion we just had, perfect. Right
Okay.
on.
Now, I emailed Aaron a couple days ago about, is there an emergency plan that we can put in a constructed treatment wetlands on really quickly? And has that ever happened before, Aaron?
Yeah, Carl, we've been thinking this through a little bit, and if disinfection is the main concern, treatment wetlands do a really nice job of natural disinfection, but they're not they're not in the same way a disinfection process that's going to be as consistent as something like a large sand filter or something that's usually used in the water treatment world, or a membrane system, or a very tight chlorination dechlorination process. And so they are very good at handling like nitrogen, phosphorus, nutrients. They do provide some level of natural disinfection. And they are, something that can be installed modularly. They're relatively low tech. But I think that the challenge of doing anything rapidly here is they have a space requirement, and there's, still engineering design that needs to be done to customize them. I'm not sure they would come any faster than ordering new UV units, honestly. But in terms of, the benefit of them in the longer run, there certainly is potential benefit there for kind of renaturalizing the water before it enters the river, and managing, temperature and nutrients and metals and contaminants of emerging concern. There's a lot of research out there. The treatment wetlands do a nice job with those things, but they wouldn't be your primary disinfection choice.
All right, thanks for the education.
Yeah, but this whole emergency response world does exist within the wastewater treatment zone. But often what we've seen that can be more quickly deployed are package units that are in above ground containers. But I'm not sure at this scale, maybe a portion of the water potentially. But there are treatment systems that have been built, within kind of roll off containers and things like that. But if disinfection, if this is a bacterial issue or a virus, and that is at least the most obvious thing, then, looking at a disinfection process is probably most advisable for the short term.
Could I just jump in there, Carl?
Yep.
So, over in Las Vegas during the fire, they hired Glorietta Geotech. I don't know if they could come up with some solution, or if the city is even thinking about coming up with some solution. I see Bill Snyder is on the line. It is serious. I think and Patricio is also on the line from the city. And these are serious issues for downstream users, and something quickly needs to be done. And if it means hiring somebody from outside to come up with a solution, then maybe that's what the city has to do.
Bill, let me catch you up real quick. So we're talking about the kind of the reality of the UV system taking some time to get replaced, right? And in the meantime, we've got the kind of not so good water going down our way. And what can we do to mitigate that, since it seems to be going to be maybe a year or two before we have a new UV system, right?
So there's two interim measures underway. One is a filter pack replacement and modification that is upstream of the UV system. And secondly, there's going to be a reconfiguration of the hydraulics, as I understand, to make effectively more contact time between the water and the UV lamps, which will then make them more efficient at destroying the bacteria. So that will happen, because you're correct, everybody who mentioned, it's going to take 2 years to design, procure, and build a replacement UV system.
Wow. Yeah, that's the kind of information that's just really important for us to share. And I think you might have missed it. The San Jose Watershed Association is going to post a page so people can have accurate information about what's going on with the E. coli. And so that's part of I think, an agreement that Mori got with Carol Romero Worth and John about doing that. It just makes sense. I mean, it's time for us to be able to get that information out, making sure. I guess one of my concerns too is if I'm walking along the river, should I be worried about letting my dog run into the water? I don't know. I don't know enough about those levels to be able to offer my thought about it. So is that something we should be concerned about?
Well, the data I've seen, Carl, does not indicate to me these are egregious violations, but any violation is considered unacceptable. And so, to your point, is there a direct contact human health risk? As far as I'm told, there is not. And again, I've always mentioned that we also have other sources of bacteria in the river, from septic, from ag practices. So, again, this problem is significant, and I know John Dupuy is really focused on prioritizing this.
Bill, I'm wondering if you have some resources or kind of a layperson's link to kind of what different levels, E. coli levels mean, that maybe it would be helpful for us to share with folks so that they can contextualize the data a little bit more to your point.
Now that is reasonable, and I think that's something this group has really been pushing the city, and we acknowledge is this sort of real-time notification, and maybe following your line of reasoning, Maury, it's a really good point, is maybe we can develop something on our website, basically, because we're collecting the data daily, and we can just effectively compare it to the regulatory standards. So
And in the
I would get
meantime,
with
we're
John
happy
Dupuy
to
see if that's something that we can accomplish here in the very near future. It does not seem like a big lift to me, but I'm not in wastewater. I'm a water guy, just trying to help.
And in the meantime, we're happy to host that page. I know that there are capacity and timing issues, but we want to make sure that we're doing it on the behalf of the city and on behalf of the community, so that we're just facilitating that shared goal of us all having access to information. But I would love, anyone on this call, if you have additional resources that you would like us to share in parallel to the data, so that we make sure that folks have access to ways to contextualize that information, so that it's not just a bunch of numbers, or if it's, depending on what the E. coli counts are, for example, people aren't unnecessarily terrified, or they've got the resources they need to weigh their risks appropriately.
Excellent point.
Carl, may I say something?
Sure. Please, Patricio.
Awesome. Thank you, Mori,
Go
for
ahead.
taking that on for us. And Bill, thank you for that additional information as well. As we were going through this conversation this morning, I was just thinking about our yearly water quality report we already put out for our drinking water standards. I was thinking of maybe in the future, that'd be nice if we can come up with a water quality report for the Santa Fe River. So we not only have our water quality report for our drinking water, we also have one for our Santa Fe River. And maybe we can push that out in paper form, as well as online for everyone around the city who may have concern of playing in the river.
Excellent. I mean, that I think that long term, that absolutely needs to be done. I think that's an excellent idea, Patricio. That's really cool. Now, William, you had a comment, but thank you, Patricia. That's something that would be a godsend. It would be such a plus for us to be able to have that kind of data, that kind of information.
Great.
William,
Yes.
what do you have to say? Go ahead, Patricio.
Oh, I was just going to say my name is on the water quality report as a Spanish contact. So if we can do that both English and bilingual, that would be awesome. That was my 2 cents. Thanks, guys.
Can you do translations?
Carl, I would
Yes,
like
go
to
ahead.
ask Bill and Patricio, like, if it's taking you 2 years to get a UV filter, how long is it going to take you to rebuild that plant? Because that is really the bottom line that needs to happen. And, it's like continually, all these fixes have not worked over the years, and we've all known this plant was failing for a long time. We're not surprised that there's E. coli and nutrients and everything. Alex Puglisi used to complain about it all the time. So I know that that's John Dupuy's department, and believe me, I will ask him that same question, but it needs to be the priority.
I think it
Commissioner
is a
Hanson,
priority.
Is that question directed to me ultimately, or?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I'll be brief. I feel the pain. I would agree with your assertion. To be specific to your question, I believe, and again, the city has to do a very root cause analysis in terms of whether economically and technically it makes sense to rebuild the complete plant as new, which is where I think John Dupuy is advocating for at this point, versus replacing and repairing, which I know is to many of you unacceptable, but there has to be sort of a cost consideration. And I would remind everybody, we've already replaced the aeration basins, we're replacing the headworks, we're replacing the UV. It's effectively gonna be a new plant in the near future once we replace the membrane filtration. So why would the city replace a new one? That's the question I think really needs to be asked through a feasibility
I think you
study.
need to go look at the Las Vegas wastewater plant. I think all of you need to take a trip there. You know, and see what a state-of-the-art plant looks like. And that plant is probably over 5 or 6 years old, or it could be, but it is a state-of-the-art plant. It's one of the best wastewater plants I've ever seen. And you know, I all care about wastewater. And that whenever I go to a NACO conference, I go see a wastewater plant, you know, so I've seen a few of them. And this is a state of the art. And we, as the capital city, should be applying for these federal monies, because there is federal money for wastewater plants. It is high on the list of in the Infrastructure Inflation Reduction Act. You know, both of those two bills have money. And so anyhow.
So acknowledged and concur. And maybe, Commissioner, the best route is through this Lower Santa Fe River planning process. I've heard time and time again, water quality is priority one.
Oh, I'm talking about the Las Vegas, Nevada plant. Also, just to be clear.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, we can do
I
a
mean, 'cause
field trip.
one of the questions we're asking in water, Commissioner, is under the one water principle, if we're going to redesign and rebuild a new wastewater plant, state of the art, do we basically design it for potable water?
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, if we're ahead of the game now, we should stay ahead of the game. You know, like
I think that's
when the
reality.
pipeline was being has been talked about, both Commissioner Hamilton and myself wanted a T at Buckman, so that if we had to divert water and clean it to potable standards, that we had an avenue to do that.
Well, my hope would be through the planning process on the Lower Santa Fe River that the county and the city basically hears loud and clear from the community that this should be emphasized. To your point, Commissioner, we need to quickly ramp up our strategic planning for funding.
You know, we all need
I
to
kind of laugh
hire.
at that.
We all need to hire a federal grants manager. You know, that's what the county needs to do. That's what the city needs to do. We need to have a specific person, not somebody on staff that pays part-time attention or a third time attention, or, you know, a quarter of their time. We need a full-time both, you know, and maybe somebody who can work together, you know, as so that we can show the feds that the city and the county are thinking about how to do this in a regional way.
William?
So to add on to what the commissioner's saying, I know that there have been like subscription services that, you know, they look for grants for you and they'll help you write the grants. And they were all kind of roundhouse based entities, but I haven't seen them for a few years. Like John Uranga used to do that, but, you know, he passed away. And, you know, I think that the Department of Agriculture has the Rural Utilities Service, and they do fund stuff like this, but it's only eligible for counties. It's not eligible for municipalities. So if the county could be a partner somehow financially, perhaps some of the money could go there.
Great idea. And Commissioner Hanson, you missed this earlier, but I'm now working down the hall from Bill Schneider and from Jesse Roach, and I'm going to be overseeing grant applications or grant processing. And so I am going to take this to heart and do the best I can in terms of finding money And I'll tell you, it's one of those things where I'm always interested in state of the art things that might be a little bit different that will do the same job. I mean, I think it's important that we look at all kinds of options for whatever treatment plant we either replace or update the current one. Obviously, from our perspective, Bill, it's been a long time coming. I realized yesterday it's 60 years old is that plant. And so it was first commissioned, 60 years ago. And so understand all the improvement, but we keep thinking there's other things that all of a sudden fall apart or break down or don't work. And then we're looking at a 2-year process to get things back up to grade. So I understand there's got to be a balance and there's got to be an understanding of the cost. But obviously, if we can get some federal money to do some neat stuff, then that's what I'm going to hope crazy that I can contribute to. And I'll be working with Bill, maybe even this afternoon, to start talking about some of these things.
So
He's already
I
looked
would
at a couple options in terms of.
I would suggest you reach out to the federal delegation. They have a grant writer, and they have a grant person who looks for everything. And I think that put them to work for us.
Absolutely. No, that's a resource we need to tap into and take advantage of without question. We're going to hit it from all angles. But again, one of the things I want to point out, and this goes to a long history in this valley, is the working between the city and county. There's more cooperation. There's more collaboration than I've seen since I've started living in this community 40 years ago. And so to me, I'm really optimistic about going forward and things that we can do if we just stick together, work together as a county and city and really do some neat stuff. One of the things I want to emphasize that everything that we've talked about is a secondary or side, I guess they call it side stream system. And I think all of us have in the collaborative agreed that we want to see a constructed treatment wetlands. And we want to take the existing, I don't know what we do with the existing wetlands, but I mean, we can make something absolutely beautiful, something that people would come visit. It would be, bird viewing or, nature walks and those kinds of things. That can be done. And it's time for us to do those kinds of things. I mean, right now we just kind of have this mess of trees and overgrown willows, and trees are dying and beavers are taking out trees, and it's just kind of a mess. And that's just that's got to be part of this big equation, is how we deal with that, how we look at the soil possible soil contamination. But one of the things neat, and this is something Michelle's pushed, is we've got funding to start doing well testing along the river. And so that's going to happen within the next few months, and that'll be a really good opportunity to see exactly what's happening with local wells, if there's a problem with them, and then how we deal with those kinds of situations.
So as a follow-up to the commissioner's poignant comment, Carl, one, we are in communication with Senator Heinrich and Congresswoman Leger Fernandez's office, who are providing us insights on grants. And more importantly, we did get that $22.7 million appropriation through WRDA, the Water Resource Development Act, and we are meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers in 2 weeks. We have John D'Antonio, the former state engineer and former chief of the Army Corps, under contract now, who's going to help guide us through this process. So we're expecting pretty quick turnaround.
So,
Where's that money for?
Money is allocated for water and wastewater. And from what I can tell, Carl, we have the discretion to spend it accordingly. 500,000 of it will go towards a feasibility study on repairs at McClure Dam, but the remainder will be decided by the city.
Cool.
So going back to the riparian area, I hope that somebody is talking to Matt Baca.
Rancher?
Because
The Baca
Baca,
family?
yeah, Matt Baca. because
Yeah.
they own the land going down to the river behind the wastewater plant.
Okay. But it ends there. I mean, it's just on the north side of Paseo Real is where they own.
I think they crossed the road. Are you sure?
Not positive. No, I'm not at all. William, you know anything about that?
I can look at on a parcel map and look at that. But the last time I saw Matt, which was last year, I think, he said that, you know, he owned the land across the road, but I don't know.
I think he does, but it's also, there's a big mix of state land office land in there.
I think that you're right about that. I think you're completely, I think there's both.
Okay, well, that's one of the things we'll need to figure out, because obviously we're not gonna do anything with somebody else's property that we can't. I just don't know what you do about the existing wetlands, how you kind of fix that. And I think that's one of those things. I think in the planning process, one of the things I think we asked for is an ecological assessment to look at what can be done with that area. Both in terms of looking at what kind of contamination there might be there, but also looking forward and figuring out how we can manage that better, you know, and really one of the things that has to come out of this whole process is a management plan for the lower San Jose watershed river, and that it is funded and it's not lost in the bureaucracy, which has happened before. But I think that's upon us to do that. Okay, any more? That's a lot of discussion about the Paseo Real water reclamation facility.
I will just add, Carl, real quickly, that Sandra did just send us some additional data from the last week. It's, you know, it's what we've seen the last few months, pretty typical, between, I think, 420, which is just above the MPDES effluent limitation, to 1,200 or so. So it's, you know, it's pretty typical of what it's been. The other thing, what was I going to say, is that it's, secondary contact is somewhere around 550. So we are exceeding secondary contact. But the permit is written for primary contact at 410 CFU per 100 mils. So I just wanted you all just to clarify those couple of things.
Okay. So again, I think if we can see what those levels mean, and have clarified as part of the presentation, part of what's going to be on the webpage, that will really be helpful. But you know, I get to the point sometimes, should there be signs along the river saying, hey, just, you know, stay out of the water? I don't know. I mean, there are people that walk along there with their animals and have for many years. And so I'm just wondering if there's some way we should warn them. And we got people farther down the river, like here in Carroll. So it's all those kind of things are things that we worry about, right? So I don't know if we do signs or whether it's appropriate or whether we just try to inform people other ways to stay out of the river.
I think to that point, Carl, I apologize if this is an obvious question, but I'm wondering if Bill or one of our colleagues from the city can speak to kind of what's being included in the master planning process that's happening with the facility, and whether those kinds of like communication and emergency response planning is part of the master plan, or if the master plan is focusing on just the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure. Because I do think that, you know, that's an important thing to highlight as well, is making sure that the communication and the emergency response human structures are operating in a way that are enabling us to respond as effectively as possible.
So I concur that's a reasonable request. I'm not involved, but I am aware. So basically there was a kickoff meeting last week for the master plan. So the timing is perfect. We had hoped that the Lower Santa Fe River planning process would have dovetailed with this, but given the scheduling, maybe disparities, what I would ask this group is to provide a list of requests that should be considered and contemplated as part of the master plan. Because this even ties back to the commissioner's very poignant comment about, do we decide to replace or repair? And so now is the time. So I will volunteer if I can get a list of priority issues that this group would like addressed in the master plan. I will personally bring it to Carollo engineers and to Mike Dozier to ensure that it's at least explored.
That's really, that's great, Bill. Thank you. That really is, it sounds like a breakthrough. That's welcomed. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Wow. Well, that leads us to the next item on the agenda, Pipeline Coalition Lower Santa Fe Watershed Planning Process Update. Michelle, you want to hit that, or we could do this together?
Can I just,
a little stuck at. Go
Carl,
ahead.
can I just interject for one moment? So who owns the land, the wetlands, is a man named Thomas Brady, owns the land right behind the wastewater plant. Then a woman named Virginia Thomas Nies. Then the Baca family has like this triangle cutout to the river right along Paseo Real. And then I think I think the rest of it is county or city or.
Yeah, Commissioner, I believe that's city, that was where the Wilderness Guardians put the bosque in. It was on city airport property, actually.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, Andy.
It
The
just
bulk of
didn't-
it, again, it's a myriad of parcels to the commissioner's point, but the bulk of where the area that Carl described as a discombobulated morass of debris is mostly on the airport.
Right, and so the county owns the land right below Hippico, a large portion of it. And then I don't get any, there's 121 Aviation Drive, so that must be that it's owned by the airport. But it's a mixture of ownership. Thank you, Carl.
So,
Okay.
and I see Aaron
So,
English
Michelle-
on this call, who we have a history with,
Yes.
and again, as part of the master plan considerations, this idea of what we'll call engineered remedial wetlands or tertiary treatment, whatever we call it, that also could be included. It's a thing where are the priorities for us? Because it may weigh in on sort of the engineering considerations.
Yeah, thanks. And we're working with the Watershed Association to help put a little bit of conceptual information build together that could be useful in like just helping folks understand like what is possible, what might not be so possible, what the potential is for that. So we're doing a little pro bono work for the Watershed Association just to like explore this idea. Yeah. I also think and I'll send some comments, but just listening to this, I'm a member. I live in the village of Agua Fria, so I'm here partly as just like a member of the, in the river communities here. But also I am a wastewater engineer and I have an interest in this, right, in general. So that's my role. Just to be clear, I'm just providing some perspective and input and support of the community effort here. But one thing that we see, because I do a lot of planning work for communities around the United States, is that, there is a move towards this one water strategy, which you mentioned, Bill, and the city is really happy to see that is making its way through, like linking together like water, wastewater, stormwater, surface water. That's a good thing. There's a lot of movement through the U.S. Water Alliance. And I know, I don't know where the city is with participating in the county, but there's really good resources through the U.S. Water Alliance and through waterreuse.org, which I'm assuming Jesse and John Dupuy are familiar with this, and the folks who are helping to lead the effort. But there's this is a topic that we see in many places that we're working with, like linking these like need to upgrade outdated infrastructure and consider things like, the longer term downstream, ecological and community benefit of the water, along with this need to produce potable drinking water and return flows back to the Rio Grande. There's a lot there, right? And I think that this is really good timing. It's an exciting thing to me, but just that I like your offer, Bill, to provide a little bit input from this group, because I'll go ahead and add just some of those resources of what we're seeing other communities kind of look at here. The potential is real to do not just a wastewater infrastructure upgrade, but create something that is really beneficial, right, for us in the long term in this region, and that is also ecologically sensitive. That wasn't always the case in the older days. So.
Great, thank you. Appreciate your insights, and anything you could share would be welcomed. And we are part of those organizations as well as NACWA. We really have ramped up sort of our affiliations to improve our ability to access outside information.
Great. Yeah, it's a good time for it. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, just feels good, folks. That's good stuff to hear. So let's go on to the Pipeline Coalition Lower Santa Fe Watershed Planning Process Update. Michelle, how we doing?
So I've heard it's in legal, as you know, this was submitted to procurement 7.5 months ago. And so.
How long ago now?
Sorry?
How long ago did you, this is for hiring the person who's going to be the facilitator, right?
Yes, I submitted the package in January, and we did an RFP and made a selection and had a conference with the vendor. And that was, I'm going to say 6-7 weeks ago. And so I will check in with procurement and see if they have any update. The last time I checked in about a week ago, I heard it was in legal, but yeah, it seems to be working its way through the process very slowly.
It's frustrating as heck, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's a reality, but the procurement process has slowed Michelle down considerably in terms of pushing this thing forward. And she'll be overseeing the funding if everybody wants to know about that, which I think that's an excellent way to handle things.
Michelle, let me know what's going on and I'll make some noise.
Thank you. Awesome.
So we've hired a person, or are planning to hire a person. It's a woman from Albuquerque. Correct, Michelle? I can't remember her name, and I wasn't familiar with her. But she's got a pretty good background. But I think one of the things that's really important for our group, and actually for the Pipeline Coalition, this is where there's like these two entities that are kind of like together, but not together. Pipeline Coalition's 22 organizations, associations, and individuals. And then we've got the collaborative, which is much looser in terms of any kind of membership. But I think there's a real opportunity to draw these two bodies together to do some work in terms of the planning process. Thank you, William. Thanks for being here. William's got to take off. And so one of the things I am, since I chair the collaborative and I'm the spokesperson for the Pipeline Coalition, is I really do want to bring these two together. And I think one of the things that was really successful in terms of creating the RP over the last year and the time we spent doing that is drawing on the knowledge and expertise of a smaller group subcommittee, and then being able to push that back to the pipeline members of the Pipeline Coalition, members of the collaborative, for feedback and input and those kinds of things. So I'm going to work to recreate that subcommittee again, probably through the Pipeline Coalition, but also through the collaborative. But just give an opportunity for us to help this new person, the facilitator, kind of hit the ground running and really be able to do. And I think we were pretty clear in the RFP about things we wanted to see happen, things we want to achieve. And so that's when I started getting in, and I wrote way too much stuff. But I went through the different tasks that we have, that we've identified. And I wanted to start looking at, well, one of the really sounds funny. One of the things I'm struggling with, and I'm wondering if Patricio might be able to do this, is someone to translate things into Spanish. I mean, I have tried to reach out people within our community and nobody feels really comfortable doing that. I don't think I want to go to the route of spending a lot of money to get a completely, a formal interpreter to do the work. So I'm just looking for resources where we can put some of the stuff, a lot of the stuff into Spanish as well as English to make sure that we're reaching out to the Mexican immigrant population or Hispanic population of our areas. So does anybody know a resource for a translator? There with that one. Okay. Patricio. Still there? Okay, I'll get him in a second.
Yes, I'm still here.
So have you ever done any translations, like written translations?
I
Like
have.
if I give you a document, you have?
Yes, I have done translations in the past. I've done translations for our conservation office, as well as some water quality report. As I mentioned, I am the Spanish contact for the water quality report. So I do translations for Spanish, that is.
So we just found our resource. And I don't know how we figured it out exactly, but I absolutely would like to take advantage of that expertise because and actually I was at a meeting this morning at Colondrinas. We were talking about the same thing about how we reach the Mexican immigrants and get them to participate and be involved with what we're doing. And so that would be a godsend, Patricio. I look forward to working with you on those kinds of issues and making sure it falls within the scope of your work too, so we're not getting you any kind of trouble.
Yes,
So
definitely.
that's one thing.
Not too
Right.
sure if you guys are familiar with QUEL, with its qualified water efficient landscaper. It's based out of California. I did help QUEL write some of their material in Spanish as well.
Impressive. That really
Thank
is impressive, man.
Mhm.
Big pat on the back. Yeah, that's cool.
Thank you. Looking
Yeah.
forward to working with you, Carl, in the group. Yes, if you need any thing translated, feel free to reach out.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna go through the task just for the sake of going through them. So the first one is the equitable community engagement plan, and that's what the obviously the facilitator is going to be doing. But again, I think the more support that we can give this person, the more able we are to. I mean, the deadline is October 15th for the plan. Bill, is that right?
Sorry, Carl, I had a power surge and lost connectivity there for a second, so I'm not.
Okay. What's the deadline for the planning to complete the process plan for the Lower Hensley watershed? October 15th?
Are you talking about the Bureau of Reclamation grant?
No, I'm talking about we had a deadline to come up with the plan for the Lower Hensley watershed. And I remember seeing October 15th, which is probably unrealistic at this point.
Yeah, the schedule's definitely slipped. I'm not exactly sure. I could pull it up if it's required, but
No, it's not required. Let's just look at that and then see if it's realistic, and maybe we need to change those dates and make it more realistic. Obviously, it would be helpful if we could hire the facilitator. So that'll be and something we'll do pretty quickly. And I may even call a special meeting so we can meet her at some point, because I don't want to wait 2 months to have her be introduced to some of the people that she will be working with and for. So, okay.
Carl, this is Andy, I'm gonna point out that, remember that plan is being facilitated, if you will, by the county. So.
Right. They
so-
oversee yeah.
So Michelle may have a better handle on that in the future than the city folks would.
But we're working pretty closely together, I
Yeah.
believe, so. Okay, okay, one of the things, task 3, we're supposed to, the facilitator is supposed to conduct a brief survey of groups, individuals, and sovereign nations. And we come up with a series of questions that we had, and this is just kind of gathering information and being able to kind of build a consensus among groups, I think. But it will be an opportunity to just kind of feel out what's going on with different people and what their interests are in terms of the river. Obviously, the sovereign nations is always an ongoing challenge. And I think that's one of the things that I hope we can kind of bridge that gap that we have between us and the Pueblos. And it's not a big gap, but there's just sometimes where we don't see eye to eye in terms of water. And I think that's to be successful, if this plan is to be successful, it has to involve the Pueblos. And I think there's different ways to do that. I mean, one of the things that I've thought about is the what's called All Pueblos Council of Governors, is an organization of all the Pueblos in New Mexico, but a presentation before them is maybe a way to start the engagement, to get the local Pueblos more involved and working with us and not working in different directions. Literature review is something that I think that is going to be a little bit difficult to do, but this is really kind of a gathering of information. And I don't know if this is something that Watershed Association would be interested in doing or being involved with. But it's just basically documenting the river's history and putting it in somewhere that can be accessed. And maybe that is the Watershed Association. I mean, that would be a really great service to be able to do. What do you think, Mori?
I think we'd be happy to take part in that process. I'm not sure that we have the capacity to do a deep dive on the literature reviewing activities fully themselves, but we'd be happy to host. We're working on kind of building out our resources. And I think that, with that type of information, it's really great if it's redundant, even if it's in several places that people are kind of looking around. But if we can be helpful with hosting things on our website or with providing the facilitator with reports and information that we've collected over the year in collaboration with city and county and other experts like William and Darren, I think, or Eladio, I think that we can definitely help them in not having to go searching too far.
Real quick update. I mean, Eladio Romero's just about done with a book, right? Oh, William's not here, but a book on the lower Santa Fe River. And he's been working on it for a while. And he said that I talked to him probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and at a meeting, and he said he's adding chapters. He keeps finding out more, but it's really kind of a recognition of the history of the lower Santa Fe River, because we always talk about Santa Fe, but there's a really broad and beautiful history of what was going on down this end of the community. And this is out of place, Bill, but I always wonder if this would be something Highlands University might be interested in. Should I talk to you or ask your wife, see if that might be a project that some of our students might be involved with?
Yeah,
shot.
I think so. Always valuable from what I've seen on what this university has provided us.
Great stuff.
I am sorry, but I just need to just clearly have on the record that the city cannot participate in any conversations with any tribal nations related to the San Juan Trauma Return Project. That government to government consultation is being done through the federal agencies.
Okay, gotcha. Understood. That's real clear. Yeah, understood. That's never an easy negotiation either. But I'll get a hold of Jennifer and see if that's something that one of her students might be interested in doing. Well, that's kind of about it. I mean, ultimately,
On
we're gonna
that
come up-
topic, Carl.
Yeah.
Sometimes I find it best to reach out to individual tribes one-on-one. I don't know if that works for you or if you can even get a meeting with them, but it's just a suggestion.
All right, so now we're up to stormwater management planning. And I brought this up because actually later today, the Water Quality Advisory Committee for the county is going to create a stormwater management subcommittee that I'm going to be part of. And this becomes part of all the other things that we're doing, that it's a major factor, obviously, for La Cienega and La Cieneguilla, since we're where all the water goes basically from the city at some point. And so it's one of those things I want to make sure that it's just on our radar, and I'll keep you posted as we start working on this. But I think I've expressed my crazy idea before, but especially for La Cienega, if there was some way we could utilize that area that's across 599 to the north of 599, it's actually an area that's owned by Peter Comas, and use that as maybe make it a park. I don't know, but it would be an area you could slow the water down before it got into La Cienega. You'd spread the water out, you'd replenish the aquifer, you'd help that, and you would prevent the awful flooding that we've had. 4 or 5 years ago, we had that really bad flood. And so that's just something that's in the works, and something that will keep everybody very closely informed about exactly what's happening with that. And I wanted to take a break. Sterling Grogan is now with us, who's a restorative ecologist. Is that right, Sterling?
Right. Yep. I
So,
don't know. Oh, yeah. Yes.
So the question, we were talking about this earlier, we have the wetlands that's below the wastewater treatment plant.
Right.
And we're concerned about the ecology there. What would an ecological assessment entail for that area?
Well, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. And I am confident that the city's water division staff knows exactly what needs to be done there. Bill Schneider, I think I've had conversations with him and with others in the city water division. So, I think that's pretty well understood. It's pretty simple. I think we have to look very carefully at the source of that water. And if it's going to continue to be the Paseo de Real treatment plant, then, as people have said, going to have to probably make some changes there. And the other part of that is that I think it is, at least from my perspective, I think we're lacking some information about exactly what we want, what our goals are for that wetland area, and how achieving those goals might address some of the concerns of the folks farther downstream. I think the goals are very important because it's not clear to me exactly what we want.
I agree. I mean, that's a really good point. And Bill, yeah. So I guess the question though, okay, so obviously we need to do something about it. But how do you go in and look at the existing issues with that? Who does that? Is it, are
Oh,
you,
I think
certainly is that something?
Yeah, I think it's going to need to be one of the government agencies involved in this process. It seems to me that the county and the city are working together, and that's really not important. That's essential. I think in order for any kind of ecological examination of the wetlands to be credible, it's going to have to be done by serious professionals under contract to one of the government agencies.
How long would that take, do you think?
How long have you got? No, I'm sorry. That's a smart ass answer. How long would it take? It'll take forever to get a contract issued for that kind of activity. I think that'll be controversial. There'll be a lot of opinions, and I think we're looking at something of a few months, maybe weeks, but I would propose a few months, because there are lots of moving parts, and absolutely connected to that is the idea that we need to establish goals for what we want. And that is going, and the goals, the achievement of those goals is going to have to be a function of that ecological investigation process. But the process cannot go forward, in my opinion, until we understand what we want. What do we want? What do the communities want? I think that has to be clarified.
Excellent point. See you there. But again, I think that's one of those things that we can do as a group, is start to look at what do we want to see there. I think, I mean, I'm not going to go into any depth right now, but I think that's one of the things we can just kind of have in our heads and start talking about what do we really want to see there. And I don't know if we can, it seems like, I don't know if you can retrofit a constructed wetlands into that area. Have no idea.
Well, yeah, excuse me
So-
for interrupting, Carl, but I get real nervous when people start talking about constructed wetlands, because there are more failures of constructed wetlands than there are successes, in my view. It's really, really easy to get elected officials to sign on to something about constructed wetlands. The problem with constructed wetlands is always the source of the water. So many constructed wetlands are failures because insufficient attention was paid in the beginning of the design. Insufficient attention was paid to the source of the water, to the continuity of the source of water. I don't know. I think there's a whole bunch of social issues involved with the people who are directly affected by that wetland, and they need to have a powerful voice. And I think the traditional communities collaborative can be that voice. But once again, I'm concerned about the idea of a constructed wetland. I don't think there's enough water security to support a constructed wetlands at this time. There may be in the future, but I certainly would not sign on to a constructed wetland now.
So, Erin, you want to respond?
Sure, yeah, and I am gonna have to, I know we're kind of running behind on this meeting. I'm gonna have just a moment here. So I think that there's different ideas being kicked around here, Carl, and I think a little bit of this is terminology. And what I'm hearing is that, you know, an ecological plan for the lower river is what you're working on, right? That's what part of this is going to uncover. And, you know, the river has historical character and function, you know, from an ecological perspective that may or may not have involved, you know, kind of natural areas of wetlands and recharge and et cetera. And so like constructed wetlands, when we're talking about that, you know, we've been, at least typically we would be considering that as like part of a process at the wastewater treatment plant, not something we would like insert into a natural wild ecosystem like within the river channel. Those are different things. So there's restoration activities that can occur within, you know, floodplain wetlands and within the river and the channel and the, you know, hydrologic condition of the river that we would not call constructed wetlands, that that's a misnomer. I would say that there may be some opportunities for enhancement or restoration, particularly if there's some evidence that this river was supportive of additional wetlands, you know, in its past. And then the constructed wetlands or treatment wetlands, engineered wetlands we've been, you know, you guys have been asking about are for biological polishing potentially at the wastewater treatment plant to address you know, some water quality issues and to also renaturalize that water coming back into the river. So to me, these are very different things. I just want to clarify that because we wouldn't nobody's like proposing putting constructed wetlands on the river. We shouldn't propose that because that's more of like a river restoration opportunity or activity. And so different things, different purposes, but we do have good faith that with, you know, I hear the comments here about making sure the water quality is understood, is that you've got any unit process that you're going to engineer, including a natural you know, treatment wetland kind of one, has to consider, you know, the reality of what the water quality is like. But there's good evidence of, you know, polishing wastewater treatment effluent using constructed wetlands, and so it's possible. But it's not putting them in the river. We'll just be clear about that. That's different.
Gotcha. Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification for sure. Appreciate it. Okay, so Mori, you want to do an update on the Santa Fe Watershed Association? What's going on?
Sure. A little bit of a pivot. I just have a few quick updates. I think the most relevant update I already shared, which was, you know, that earlier this week at the water breakfast meeting, I offered to John Dupuy and Councilor Romero Worth that the Watershed Association could even temporarily host the data that apparently has now been sent for the last week to Carl and Michelle. And maybe they'll include me on that list, or I can keep getting it from you, Carl, you know, to just make the E. coli numbers from the wastewater treatment plant more accessible publicly, that folks can go to this link and check it, and we will update it, / I will update it myself regularly whenever I get new data, and that this can just, you know, assist the city as they're formulating a more sustainable way to share their information. So that webpage, I'll share the link with all of you. We can send out an email afterwards, and we'll put it in our Watershedders, which is going out this Friday. And you know, my hope is that it can provide assistance on behalf of everyone who's concerned about the numbers. And I will also try to supplement those numbers with links if you all want to send me links or information to, as I said earlier, contextualize that information about what is safe for kind of walking your dog next to, should you be keeping your dog or your kids out of the river, you know, how can you be interacting with it, what's safe, what do these numbers mean? But again, I'm happy to take feedback or advice, or if anyone has concerns about this process, please let me know. And I will gladly turn it over to the city and we can link to their page once they have that set up. But I think that in the meantime, it's really important to everybody to have this data available so that we can keep track of what's going on. So that's the main takeaway. Happy to.
Moya, will you be at the River Commission meeting tonight?
I will be.
Okay, just so I think this is important information to share with them.
Absolutely. I can have the link live to share with everyone there.
Thanks.
Yeah. So that's the main update. We've had some staffing challenges and fun this summer. So we've kind of gotten a little bit behind on some of our internal work, but our core team is continuing to take it on. And so we have a Watershed Fest coming up starting at the end of this month, and we're kind of adding more supplemental events for the Wild and Scenic Film Festival that we've been hosting for the last 4 years. But now the first event that we're hosting as part of that to kind of localize that film festival is we're going to be screening the recent film Acequias, The Legacy Lives On by R.C. Chapa. And so I wanted to share that with you all. It's more relevant to the collaborative, and we'll be having a panel discussion afterwards that a few acequieros and scholars and the filmmaker will be on, kind of discussing the legacy of acequias and their importance with hydrology and probably a lot of other topics. Phil Beauvais is one of the panelists, so we're really excited to highlight his expertise in the Santa Fe watershed and as kind of the patriarch of the Acequia Madre. And so we're really, really excited for that. And then we've got almost a month of events after that, film screenings and workshops and volunteer opportunities. But we're kind of just playing around with different events to engage the community. It's still mostly kind of urban Santa Fe focused, but we're really excited to expand the offerings in future years and kind of invite more people to get involved in more ways. So that's definitely something that's coming up for us. We're continuing to kind of move forward with updates to our Adopt Your Watershed program, which I'll share as they take shape more. And I think finally, I just want to underscore again that we want to continue supporting the collaborative, the coalition, this lower river planning process however we can. We are not an official contractor or participant in making any of this happen, but we just want to continue to offer to be a bridging community member that can help support, provide resources, whatever we can, using our own resources and, just being hopefully helpful community members. So that continues to be our goal. And however we can accomplish that, please let me know, let Amara know. We're eager to keep supporting everything that's going on in the entire watershed, but definitely the lower watershed is something that we continue to care a lot about and want to emphasize in our work and support.
Thank you for the contribution that you and Amara have made in terms of anyway. Thank you very much. That was well spoken and well received and appreciated. And I think we're going to invite you to one of our breakfasts to do a presentation in La Cienega at some point. So look for an invitation. We have good food and good conversation. And actually, the head chef is right beside it. Kier Teresio has overseen for the last 5 years at least. And
I
Bill,
think
you're
it's
invited
been-
too. Our breakfast, you've been here
Yeah.
breakfast before.
You're all invited if you'd like to come. I think it's been
Yeah.
at least 5 years or longer. It's been quite a while. Yeah, so, but please come. The next one's in September. I'm not exactly sure of the date, but I'll get it out to Carl and we'll get it out to everybody.
Cool.
Sounds great. Thank
Okay.
you.
They're fun.
Oh, Carl,
really are.
I'll just say one more thing here. I think everybody already knows, but since we've been doing these collaborative meetings on Zoom, all of the meeting recordings are available on our website and on our YouTube channel. So you can check them out anytime. And we can get better about sending the link out in our newsletter as well.
I've had people look at, I mean, actually go through them and are very impressed with the being able to go through and hearing a lot of interesting conversations about water. And again, I mean, anything else for today, folks? Again, this is one, I every time I'm with this group, I'm continually impressed by the quality and understanding and professional knowledge of water in this area and working together. And again, I'm going to say this over and over again. I do it all the time, but the county and city working together is something that is genuinely appreciated, and it's such a relief to be able to do that, because in the past it wasn't quite that way. And so that's a really good, I think, omen for the future in terms of what's going to happen with the lower Santa Fe watershed. And I think we can set an example for other communities as well. I mean, this is, to me, one of those telling moments. And given the issues of water in New Mexico, I think this is really a shining example of what you can do when you bring people together and you talk a little bit and you share values and you share appreciations, and you have your differences, but you work them out and you keep moving forward to do the best we can for water. So thank all of you for attending, as always. Appreciated. And then let's keep fighting the good fight, and we'll figure out what we can do with the wastewater treatment plant, whether we replace it or just update it. I look forward to those conversations. Anyway, thank you so much. See you next time. Thanks, Patricio.